I realized that this is actually a very important field.
If the AI data center boom hadn't come along, I don't know what would have given the impetus to power semiconductors.
Genuinely in awe of this material. Welcome to Supply Chain. I'm John from Asianometry.
I'm Tim Culpen from Culpium. Hey, John, I know recently you did a video on GAN, or as we might say in Mandarin, GAN, but that's actually a rude word. So GAN, it is GAM, gallium nitride. Just recap for me quickly. I remember you said there were 3 major uses for GAN semiconductors. Give me the recap on that.
GAN started out in light and blue, that famous blue light, the blue laser that everyone wants to talk
Yeah.
about. Everyone does a video about it nowadays. So I
Who's
covered
not done
that.
a Nishia video? Have you done a Nishia video?
It
I mean, he won
feels
a
like I
Nobel
did.
Prize, didn't he? He won a Nobel Prize for that. So,
And I think they're still dominant in white LEDs somehow.
mm,
Um,
mm. Anyway,
it's
go
kind of,
on.
it's just crazy to think like how much people didn't believe that lamps or incandescents would be replaced. And then it happened so fast and now it's just normal.
I can
And
imagine for millennia, people thought the horse was never going to be replaced. And then it
uh,
was.
and then it was. And then after that, it expanded into radio frequency, RF,
Wow.
like radars and stuff like that. And they did a lot of work with GaN to make it into kind of like this really reliable material, growing it. I think always been the biggest problem has been growing this
Mm.
stuff, like making it. And then I finished off by discussing its potential in power, discussing power semiconductors and the potential. No, we don't know if it's real yet, but the potential of a vertical transistor made from GaN.
Right. And that's because of wide band gap materials that GaN and silicon carbide offer that plain silicon don't offer, right?
I think GaN actually has a wider band gap than silicon carbide, but people will have to
I
check me
think
on
you're
that.
right. But, Vic from Vic's newsletter and Semi Dope wrote a piece saying people get a little bit too caught up in the difference between the two. And he had a pretty reasonable point to make about it. So I recommend people go back and read that piece. I do remember that to start off your video on GAN, you had a quote from one of the early kind of scientists in GAN about it, just keep on giving. Can you remember that what that quote was?
He said it's God's
It
gift
was,
to man. It just keeps trucking. You don't know
but
how it
it's
works, but it just keeps trucking.
I was wondering whether that was sarcastic, because it keeps on giving, but it's really hard to work with and hard to make. So
Yeah.
was he actually being sarcastic or was he serious?
No, I listened to it. He's genuinely in awe of this material. It's remarkable.
It sounds like
He
being in awe of souffle, like it's wonderful to eat, but really hard to make, but it's a fantastic dish.
I think he's in awe of its crappiness to work with, but yes, he does think there's something special. It wants to work. It's like how AI people talk about the models. They just want to learn.
So
They
it's
just
like a
want to
diva
learn.
compound. It's like a diva compound. It can be difficult and it gets away with it because it's so useful. It's
Yeah,
a talented chemical compound.
yeah, way better than gallium arsenide. That's for sure.
Right. So gallium nitride. So that brings me to wide band gap semiconductors. And they're kind of having bit of a renaissance recently in many areas. Power semiconductors are very important. Let's just recap quickly what a power semiconductor does, John.
Power semiconductor. They're different from logic semiconductors. A logic semiconductor just gets a gate. Tiny little signal that goes through. Tiny little piece of electricity goes through, and they're very small, can't do anything. But a power semiconductor is an actual valve for a power
Mm.
current, or that will run and drive like a train or an EV or something like that. So they're very big. They're very chonk, as I like to say. Um, it's a very old field. I think it's a field that people, I started into it with a thyristor, and then
That's right.
I realized that this is actually a very important field. And so
It is.
I've been in a very difficult, very difficult foray in power semiconductors.
I think, by the way, I have to interrupt you. I think Blackwell and Hopper and Rubin might disagree with your belief that logic doesn't do anything. But it does remind me of there's, in a way, 3 or 4 different types of semiconductors. There's many more, but there's logic, there's memory, there's power doesn't actually calculate anything really. It doesn't actually store anything. It's just a regulatory function. And then there's MEMS. MEMS are essentially a type of semiconductor. MEMS are fantastic and fascinating.
They're gears.
Power semis are have been around a long time, and they seem to come and go in terms of their popularity. They're always a new renaissance from time to time. I think one of the most important parts of a power semiconductor is it just regulates power. That sounds really straightforward and boring, but you need to have very stable voltages and currents, and they're a function of each other, current and voltage, when you are using it, especially in smaller devices that really need to be very exacting in the voltage and current that's delivered. One of the reasons why we're seeing a renaissance now is because of these sensitive GPUs that are being used in racks. There's a lot of voltage coming in, but when you're actually putting it down to the die level, you've got to step down this voltage to like under a volt, if I'm not mistaken, John. So it's got to be very exact and it's got to be very stable. So that's one of the reasons why I think power semis is so fascinating. But tell me about like how GaN is going to play a role, and can we compare it to silicon carbide?
All these wide band gap materials, the problem with silicon is that silicon's fine and silicon's great for logic, but one of the big issues with silicon is that the band gap isn't particularly wide. It's wide enough, I would say, for logic, but when you're dealing with more, let's say, powerful currents or higher voltages, it doesn't quite hold up. And
Right.
there's a possibility that when that it gets overloaded, and then it's almost like a dam, the whole thing breaks.
It can break
Um,
through. Yeah.
yeah. So wide band gap is one of those exotic materials. I mean, exotic in the sense that they're no longer they're different than silicon, but they just go in and they have much more powerful. Um, they're just like a higher dam, if you like to think
Yeah.
about it that way.
Right.
Um, I've done a
You
few
don't want
videos about
leakage through the dam. That's the key point is you don't want leakage through the dam wall. You can't have a drop of water get through to the other side. Otherwise you have
yeah,
problems.
or you don't want the dam to collapse, right?
Yes.
Um, and I've done a few videos on wide band gap. I've done my favorite one recently is like diamond. Diamond is technically a semiconductor. It's a wide band gap
Hmm.
semiconductor. Um,
Is diamond a wider band gap than GaN or SiC?
I think it's like way, 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 way wider, but you have to check me on that.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Apparently, but it's a substance problem because we don't know if you can make it in a
Right.
cost-effective manner. That's a lot of these wide bandgap things. Like silicon is the second most common thing or the most common thing in the Earth's crust, easy to find. Definitely not the case for gallium nitride. Silicon carbide has a manufacturing problem as well, and
Yeah.
diamond, of course, not fun.
Right. Right. It does remind me of the fact that even just the substrate wafer is different to a silicon wafer, right? So just you're starting with a different base material if you're doing power semiconductors, is that right?
I think gallium nitride in this case, I mean, they have GaN on silicon carbide. They have
Ah.
GaN. You're looking for something that's like, if you want full GaN, that stuff is harder.
Mm,
And it's not like they can't make it, but the question is like, can you make big chunks of
enough of
it?
it.
Like, you can't make silicon carbide as the way you do with silicon, famously,
Mm,
right? Because you can't make melt. You can't make a melt out of it. Same thing with gallium nitride. It becomes unstable when you try to make
right.
big bowls of it.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's a lot of companies out there now getting into this. Well, I shouldn't say now. They've been into it for a while. One that comes to mind is Wolfspeed, which does the substrate. But Wolfspeed went bankrupt a year or two ago. They're now back. The stock went up, stock went down. And it's one of those crazy bets. If they can make it, they will write their own checks. And if they don't make it, they're just going to burn a lot of money. So it's interesting to see the history and the evolution of power semiconductors and through their uses. And today we're now at the point of using them in data centers. Do you have any position on GaN versus SiC? That seems to be almost a religious debate among some people, but I don't really know why.
I don't know why either, but I think there's some arguments, like a lot of this is architectural, right? I
Mhm.
think silicon carbide has, for example, position in the higher voltage parts of
Right.
the value chain because of EV, right? But also because they have this ability to provide these big flat vertical transistors, big flat vertical transistors, which are really cool. I mean, I legit want to do a video about it, but I got others to make first. But it's like big and wide, so the current can go through that's big and wide. And it's the only way they can do that is that they put literally the source and the drain on opposite sides of like, this big circle thing.
Right.
It's crazy.
You hinted
Um,
at that in kind of the last few minutes of your GaN video when you
yeah.
talked about that issue.
Mhm.
Have scientists nailed this in terms of making it in yield and scale? Or is it still going to be a challenge for a few years to come?
Who knows? A silicon carbide has a silicon carbide's tough to compete with. I think right now
Mhm.
because of the. I think I've not done too much digging into it, but I know that China really went really hard into silicon carbide, and one of the reasons I think Wolfspeed went into bankruptcy is because China kind of pulled the rug out from them, or they did their
Yeah.
normal China thing, and so
Yeah.
it's tough. It's a little tougher than I would say. For me, I have a hard time trying to tell between the two of them, but I've always done videos about GaN. I've never done that many videos on silicon carbide, so I need to I need to brush up on that more in the future.
Who are the companies we should be looking at now?
I think I'm interested in right now um companies I'm doing that.
It seems like the Japanese and the Koreans are getting
I
into
think
it again. There's a few
yeah,
Taiwanese.
there's a few Taiwanese. Is there a Taiwanese? What's a Taiwanese power semiconductor company?
There is, and I will think of it. And everyone's going to listen to this episode and go, Tim doesn't know what he's talking about. But I know there is. I just can't remember who it is.
I know the Japanese. The Japanese and the Koreans are doing a lot right now in power semiconductors. One of the reasons I got into it in the first place is that I heard that Japan is trying to do one of their classic industrial policy things where they're trying to consolidate the power semiconductor operations of Mitsubishi, Toshiba, and ROM
Into
into
one
just
company.
into one big Japanese company. But in typical Japanese fashion, it's not quite working well. And so like they're gonna at first it's gonna be one big company, and now it's gonna be like a weird triplicate thruple of companies.
All
So
doing power semiconductors.
yeah, all doing power, and I
So
think
they're trying to build a superpower
yes,
company.
a superpower. Ah, ha, ha.
They should use that name. I know there's some Koreans involved in this area as well. I think it's Magnet Chip, spin-off of SK Hynix, is now pushing into this area and are trying to turn things around and go in a forward direction. So I think that that'll be interesting because the Koreans definitely are always players in the chip industry.
I'm kind
But
of
to me,
surprised. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, to me, it would be cool if the Japanese do become players.
They kind of are, right?
Yeah, I guess you're right. But what I mean is, it'd be cool if they get some more recognition.
Mm,
DRAM was boring and now it's hot and hip.
mm.
TSMC had been around 30 years before anyone noticed them, right? Now people are starting to wake up and notice MediaTek. So I wonder whether if power semiconductors become the next hip thing, people will start looking at the Japanese players that are in this area and go, oh, right. Another company is Infineon.
Ah,
Infineon's
they're the
been,
leading one. I think they're
yeah,
the world's largest.
yeah, yeah.
Infineon.
They've been in it for a long time. They're not new to it. They've been in it for a very long time.
It's
And
kind
so
of a
I think
special field, right? It's not exactly like logic where you have to like make the smallest transistors. So there's something really
it's like
interesting
nothing
about.
else. You're right. The pressure is on the power semiconductor guys. One interesting thing I learned in my research is in terms of using power semiconductors as uh, transformers and
You mean robots
controllers
in
of power.
disguise?
Yeah, no. I mean, replacing a donut shaped piece of iron and two copper wires with an array of very expensive semiconductors. Because,
And another transformer, by the way.
right, right, right. Because at the simplest level, people should go out and Google this. It's the most beautiful thing in the world. A squarish donut shaped piece of iron, with copper coil around one side, copper coil around the other side. That's how you step up or step down AC voltage. It's like, how is that? How does that work? How is that so simple? How is that so like it's like my ninth grade science? But that's what it is. And now there's a whole burgeoning semiconductor industry who wants to do the same thing. Very, very complicated, very fragile. They're trying to make something really simple, very difficult. But there's reasons for it.
You mean the
It's all basic, like high school physics. It's not high school physics to make it, but the concepts are all high school physics. So anybody can go out and learn about the basics of power transformers, voltage regulation, current regulation, all that.
it's kind of interesting. I think I read somewhere that there's like a 6-year delay in transformers for data centers, and one of the reasons why solid state transformer, you didn't even say the name. It's a solid state transformer.
Yeah,
Why solid
yeah.
state transformers are so popular or in vogue right now, and partially is because easier to make. I
Old.
think slightly easier to
Well,
make.
while old school transformers, like China dominates a lot of that, and it's a very industrial business. You go out onto the street and often hidden in a metal box is a transformer, or up high on a power line is a transformer.
In a bucket.
Yeah. And people just don't think twice about them. But it's a very industrial thing, right? They don't need to be made in clean rooms. They're made more like in metal forges and metal foundries, not semiconductor foundries.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, one of the reasons why it's popular now is because there's a shortage of the other type. And it's ironic to think that you could spin up a semiconductor version of something quicker than you could spin up a non-semiconductor version of something. That's definitely puts the world upside down.
Do you think power semiconductors are as big as they are if it wasn't for the AI boom, the data center boom?
No, I don't think so. I think they are a huge catalyst. I think that if the EV market had kept on going on the same trajectory before, look, I think it's not unfair to say that Trump kind of killed it for the US market, and the overbuilding in China has killed it for the Chinese market. I mean, people were talking about the Chinese EV market as being huge 2 years ago. It's still huge, but I mean, companies are going to go bankrupt soon. So EVs are a huge driver. But with the slowdown in EVs, it's been the kind of the savior. In the same way that AI has been the savior for the logic semiconductor industry, because the smartphone era was kind of dying out, right? I mean, it was coming, the growth years were coming to an end. But suddenly we've got AI chips, logic chips. So I think it's the same analogy, really. And if the AI data center boom hadn't come along, I don't know what would have given the impetus to power semiconductors to have this renaissance right now.
Is a fair talk.
Maybe
Well,
satellites.
satellites.
Maybe satellites. There might have been something else, but not to the scale of AI.
I love that call. You've been listening to Supply Chain. I'm John from Asianometry.
I'm Tim Culpin from Culpium. Thanks for listening.